Hello, everybody, and welcome back from spring break. We're going to jump right into cardio part 2, arteries and veins. Roman numeral 1, blood vessel structure and function. We're going to be able to describe the structural and functional differences between arteries and veins. So, in the cardiovascular system, you have three major types of blood vessels that transport blood to the body tissues and then back to the heart. As we learned last quarter, right before the break, we know that arteries carry blood away from the heart, arteries away, and then they branch into smaller vessels called arterioles. Now, from arteries to arterioles, then you go to what bridges the gap between arteries and veins, and that's capillaries. And here in the capillaries, tiny little capillary beds where diffusion of gases occurs. We call this gas exchange. So I always like to pull a little asterisk out to the side here that gas exchange happens at the capillary level. Now, that's not only between body tissues, that's also in the lungs as well. And when we get to the respiratory system, we'll talk about it then. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about oxygen being dropped off. And notice I'm going to use purple arrows here because red and blue, when mixed together, make purple because oxygen, O2, oxygenated blood, is being dropped off to body tissues. And what's being picked up is carbon dioxide. So that's gas exchange on the capillary level. Now, coming back to the heart, veins come back to the heart. They carry blood back to the heart. So remember, arteries away from the heart, veins carry blood to the heart. And blood drains from the capillaries into smaller veins that are called venules. And then venules go into larger veins and eventually empty into either the superior vena cava or the inferior vena cava. Now, let's talk a little bit about the structure of these vessels. Your blood vessel walls have three distinct layers, or what they are referred to as tunics, that surround a central blood-containing space, and that blood-containing space they're called lumens. Now, your tunic layers are thick in arteries and relatively thin in the veins. All right, so let's take a look at this right here. And you can see a micrograph here, and you can see how thick the walls are. Let's see, we'll do this. You can see how thick the walls are here in an artery versus what you might see in a vein. The other thing you need to notice is that while the artery walls are thicker, as you can see here, than they are in the veins, the lumens in a vein is much larger than the lumen in an artery. And as we're going through this, one of the things we need to notice here is a particular feature in veins is that they have valves. And we know from heart structure that the function of a valve is for a one-way flow of blood to the heart. All right, because remember, there's gravity is going to pull this down. And this really isn't under pressure as much as it is coming from the heart. And so here you can see the basement membrane around a capillary, and we said that those capillaries were a single cell thick, and they're made of endothelium. And that endothelium would be simple squamous epithelium, one layer of flattened cells. So I'm just going to write that out there. Simple squamous is the type, and it's endothelium because it's on the inside. Epi meaning on or above. So this is on the inside, so we call it endothelium. And you can see each of the tunics and how they're layered. And again, you see arteries to arterioles, gas exchange on the capillary level, then going back to the heart, venules to veins. Okay, so you have the blood flow going this way to this way, and then here you have venules back to veins. All right. Okay, and again, you can see the micrograph showing the difference between the arteries and the veins. Thicker walls in the arteries, larger lumens in the veins. So let's just go ahead and make a note of that. Sorry to drop that away, guys. We're going to say thicker wall. This is jumping around an awful lot. Ooh. All right, let's see if we can do this again. Thicker walls, or thicker tunics, if you would say that. And over here we have larger lumens. All right, so let's talk about the different blood vessels of the body. So that our Roman numeral number 2, our objective here is name and give the location of the major arteries and veins of systemic circulation. So we're going to start with the aorta, which is the largest artery in the body leaving from the left ventricle of the heart. Now, here are the various regions. You have the ascending aorta. That's the first portion leaving the left ventricle. Leaving the ascending aorta, you have the right and left coronary arteries. Remember, they're the ones that supply blood to the heart tissue itself. Blood going through the heart does not nourish the heart, so you have to have blood coming into those right and left coronary arteries. And then it goes into the aortic arch, which branches to the left, and that's anatomical left. And there are 3 branches at the top of it: brachiocephalic, left common carotid, and left subclavian. Notice I'm going to do this in vivid orange here, all caps. Anatomical position. All right, got to know your anatomical position. Then you have the descending aorta when it branches over the ascending or thoracic order that runs along the anterior spine above the diaphragm. All right, and then it becomes the abdominal aorta once it pierces the diaphragm, and then it runs the rest of the torso length, and it has branches off of it. So, a couple things I want to make note of here, guys, for you. A few different things that I want you guys to know. We've already talked about the right and left coronary arteries off of the ascending aorta. Now, I want to talk about the descending or thoracic aorta. It's got some branches off of it as well, which I think you guys need to know. First and foremost, you have the intercostal arteries, and these are the thoracic wall. So that's the wall, or the quote-unquote wall of the rib cage. Notice that costal meaning rib. And then you have the bronchial arteries. and that's the lungs. You have the esophageal arteries, and that's going to be the esophagus, obviously. And finally, you have the phrenic arteries. Now, guys, match your furs here. Phrenic arteries serve the diaphragm. Okay, so match your furs. PHRs there. All right, those are a couple things I wanted you to note there of as the regions of the aorta. Ascending, off of the ascending is the right and left coronary arteries. Aortic arch, 3 branches. We call these 3 branches BCS. That's how you remember it. Brachiocephalic, common carotid, left subclavian. So we call those branches BCS. All right. And so as we go on, we're going to look at this flow chart here. Left ventricle of the heart, you've got the ascending aorta, off of it, right and left coronary arteries. So here is my ascending aorta and my right and left coronary arteries. Then I get the brachiocephalic, left common carotid, and left subclavian. Now, off of the brachiocephalic, I get my right common carotid and my right subclavian. Okay. Off of my left common carotid, I get my left external carotid and my left internal carotid. Off of my left subclavian, I get my left vertebral. Then I go into the left axillary and then the arteries of the upper limb. All right, so the orange is, okay, so I have yellow that's coming off of the aorta, the aortic arch. Okay, so that's left, right and left coronary arteries, brachiocephalic, common carotid, left subclavian. Then branching off of those main branches in orange, brachiocephalic, right common carotid, right subclavian. And you have from there, again, if you have it on the right, you have it on the left. So if I've got a left vertebral, I've got a right vertebral. Then I've got right axillary and then arteries of the right upper limb, just like I have arteries of the left upper limb. The only difference being is that in this case, these are third branches. All right. Now, after the aortic arch, I get the thoracic or descending aorta. You can see how it goes through. Now, visceral branches where it goes to organs, I have the esophageal. We're not going to do mediastinal, but esophageal, bronchial, and then I've got the pericardial, obviously. Then I've got the intercostals and the phrenics. And then it goes through the diaphragm. When it goes through the diaphragm, it becomes the abdominal aorta. And then you have the branches off of the abdominal aorta. And then that going down to the lower limb. And I'm going to do this as a different little flow chart a little bit later on. All right, so moving forward on this, we are going to go into labeling. All right, so I need to know anatomical right and anatomical left. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to label that so I don't get confused. All right, so now let's start from the top, and it's following this along. And so if you follow this one right here, you can see this top one right here. It eventually goes inside and deep. And so that makes it my right. Let's do this in black. That makes it my right internal carotid. Now, the next one is a major branch, and you can see it goes more superficial. So that would make that my right external carotid. Okay, now both of these are branching off. Now, if you follow these down, follow this third arrow where it branches off into two down, you can see one of them comes off of a branch, and then the other one on the left side goes straight back to the aortic arch. So that makes those my right and left, because there are two arrows there, common carotid. Now, the left common carotid is the middle branch of the BCS right off of the aorta. Now, guys, when y'all take your quiz on this, you're going to see this in color. Back in the day, when we were doing this on paper, this wouldn't have been in color. And I would tell my students, so that you don't confuse arteries diagram and veins diagram, you need to look at the aortic arch and treat it like the handle on a duffel bag. All right, anything, a handle that you carry, anything, purse, duffel bag, backpack, whatever. If it's got the handle on top of it, it's the arteries, because that's the aortic arch. All right, so the next one coming down, and we're on the fourth one down here, and it's a small vessel going straight up through the neck region, and that would make that the right vertebral. And then the next one, you can see that vessel goes underneath the clavicle. So underneath is below, so that is the right subclavian, because it goes below the clavicle. And then I have the brachiocephalic. Now, this is called brachiocephalic because it serves the head, which is cephal, and the arm, which is brachial. So it's called brachiocephalic, and it's closer to the right side of the body. So it can split like that and absorb, and the pressure is close enough because the blood is leaving the right side of the body and going straight down into the arm. It's not having to go as far over. Now, right immediately below that, you have what is known as the aortic arch. And then we have the ascending aorta, because it is coming up out of the left ventricle. We'll continue on down the right-hand side of the body, and then we see the coronary arteries. They're serving the blood flow to the heart itself. And as we continue on down, we have what is known as the trunk. And I'm going to circle this right there because, as I said, a trunk is a main line. So that's the celiac trunk. Now, coming off, there are three branches of the celiac trunk. They are the left gastric, there's the splenic, and the common hepatic. Common hepatic goes to the liver. So this, and this are the three branches of the celiac trunk, and that's what branches off of that trunk line. And you can see we have passed through the diaphragm here, and that this next line is pointing directly to the vessel itself, so that makes it the abdominal aorta. Now, the abdominal aorta is kind of like I-40. Main line going through the abdomen, and you have things that leave or exit off of it. All right, main line going through the abdominal region, and you have vessels that exit. The first one is the superior mesenteric. Mesenteric meaning serving parts of the small intestine, the upper part of the intestines. The next one you are pointing to, it's pointing to the right renal, but you can also see there is a vessel pointing to the left renal as well. But I'm going to label this right renal because it's on the right side of the body. Following the right renal is the right gonadal. Now we're using the term gonadal generic. It would be right testicular if it was a male, right ovarian if it was a female. But for right now, it's the right gonadal. And then immediately inferior to that is going to be the inferior mesenteric. And that's taking a blood supply to the lower portion of the intestines. Now, You can see at this point right here, and I'm going to draw a line right here, you have a branching. And so your abdominal aorta becomes your right and left common iliac. But what we're labeling at this point would be the right common iliac. Just keep in mind that there is a left common iliac as well. And then branching, then it further branches again. And this smaller branch is going to be the right internal iliac. And as I go on, that's all I have on the right side. So we'll go over here and go over to the left. We already named this one as the left common carotid up here, right there. It's the left common carotid coming off of the aortic arch. You can follow it down. And so this is going to make this going below the collarbone, the clavicle. This is going to be our left subclavian. Now I'm going through the underarm area, so that's going to be my left axillary. I am into the main portion of the arm, so that becomes my left brachial. Now I need to come down here and I need to trace these. The first one is headed off towards the thumb side, so that would make that my left radial. The one immediately below that one is headed off towards the pinky side, so that would make it my left ulnar. Now, here you can see that what I have right here, this is superficial. So this is going to be my superficial palmar arch. Then this would be my deep palmar arch. And these are going to my fingers, so these would become my digital arteries. My digitals. All right. So, as I said, I have my branch up here. And so I went down to my right common iliac, and then off of my right common iliac came my right internal iliac. So off of my left common iliac, after the branch, right there, this one becomes my left external iliac. All right, and then so this long artery, longest artery in the body, is going to be my femoral artery. Ladies and gentlemen, you transect or bisect the femoral artery and don't get treatment immediately, you will bleed out in a matter of minutes. A femoral artery injury is really serious. Then going through my knees becomes my popliteal. Now I have my anterior tibial because it is on the top or the front, and then I have my posterior tibial. And then this loop down here in the pedal region is known as the arcuate. And just like I had above, also in my foot, I have digitals as well. All right, so those are all of my arteries. Now, let's take a look at the veins chart. Now, in veins, blood's coming back to the heart. So everything's coming back to the right atrium. So everything above the head, the neck, the arms, and the chest empties into the superior vena cava. Everything below the diaphragm comes back through the inferior vena cava. Now, we have a few different names for veins that we're going to look at. And I'm going to do a flowchart concept map that we'll go through here shortly. But for right now, I'm going to label the veins. And I think what I'm going to do, guys, is do this in 2 different videos. So you can do the arteries and veins, and then I'll do the concept map. I've already put out a veins concept map video, but I think what I'll do is I'll do an arteries concept and a newer veins concept video. So let's go and label our veins. All right. So at the most superior point on this one, we have what's known as our dural sinuses. Okay, so that's this is where blood flow comes back from the brain and empties into the dural sinuses. Then we have your external jugular because it is on the outside. And again, guys, you need to remember we need to label this on the right side and we need to label this on the left side so we remember anatomical position. And then I have my internal jugular. You can see the difference between, and these are veins, jugular veins. All right, guys, I'm going to go back one on this one. All right, because I was not paying attention to where this one is going from. This one is my vertebral. Sorry about that, guys. I just didn't follow it all the way through. So this is my vertebral going into my neck. This is going to be my internal jugular. All right. Now, I have the next one down, you can see I have two arrows that are coming into. So what I'm going to do is label the superior vena cava and go back up from that. All right, so here's my superior vena cava right here. If you follow that up, I have two branches. That's my right and left brachiocephalic, meaning it's taking blood from both the arms and the head. Now, here are my great cardiac veins, taking blood back from the heart muscle. I have within my liver, my right and left hepatic veins. And notice they are emptying into what you can see as coming into the bottom part of the heart, which would be the inferior vena cava. Right below the hepatic veins would be the splenic. And then I have, at this point, what's known as the hepatic portal. And I'm just going to circle that right there, the hepatic portal. Now, the hepatic portal is the entryway into the liver. The liver detoxifies and cleanses all of the blood that comes from the stomach and the intestines. So a portal is an opening. So all the veins, gastric veins and the mesenteric veins and everything empty in through the hepatic portal. Now, here, guys, this is the right renal. All right. And then I have the superior mesenteric. You can see that is going up from the into the hepatic portal. So this is the superior mesenteric. And then over here, I have the inferior mesenteric. Right here, guys, is the inferior vena cava. And you can see that inferior vena cava actually runs all the way up and runs behind the liver. The liver, it does not run through the liver, it runs behind the liver. Everything drains into the liver, and then those right and left hepatic veins at the top up there, guys, empty back into the inferior vena cava. Now, again, you have your common iliac. So at this point, we're kind of going in reverse as arteries. This is going to be your internal iliac. All right, so let's just start from the bottom, just come around the bottom and go up from there up to the top. I have my dorsal digitals. I have my dorsal venous arch. I have my anterior tibial. I have my femoral. Actually, I'm going to change that, guys. That's going to be my small saphenous based on where that is over here, posterior side of that. And then my posterior tibial. All right, popliteal. Now, longest vein in the body, and notice where it comes from. Here, all the way down. So I'm going to erase that because I don't want to leave that there. But that is the great saphenous. Here I'm showing again my femoral vein. And then this is pointing to, after the divide, the external iliac. Digitals. Again, I'm going to want to trace where it's going, and this one is going to the thumb, so that makes this my radial. That makes this my ulnar. Now, in we call the antecubital region, the bend of the elbow, where two vessels join together, we call it the median cubital vein, and that's where they draw blood from. The most interior is the basilic. In the middle, you have the brachial. Then you have the cephalic. Under the arm, you have the axillary. And here you have your left subclavian. All right, and that would be all of the veins. And that's where I'm going to stop tonight. I'll have another video that does concept map. All right, see you in class Monday or Tuesday. For my AO kids, I'll see you in Zoom Tuesday afternoon. Bye, guys.